Hey there, everybody. Before we get started on today's episode, I just want to mention that we had a little oopsie doodle on Phil's recording settings, so he's going to sound like he's a little bit tinny or what have you. That just happened for this episode. The following episode, it'll be A-OK. So don't you worry. We caught it. We fixed it. And moving on, I hope you enjoy today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Pixel It podcast. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Pixel It. My name is Kevin, alongside Phil, and today we're continuing down the path of Far Cry Absolution and deeper into the majesty of Montana.
The just thrilling, beautiful vistas where people can go just to get away from it all and kill people, just kill people, and there are no consequences in Montana.
There are no consequences. Yeah,
that's the state. That's like it's either the state motto or the tourism board's motto. There are no consequences in Montana.
How do you think Harrison Ford gets away with crashing his planes constantly?
He doesn't anywhere else but Montana.
Come to Montana, crash your planes.
Just do it. Crash your shit. Just crash it, man. It's a good way to live.
When he got to Montana, he turned to Chewie, who was not there, and said, "We're home."
And Ally McBeal was like, "Honey, it's not. There's no. Never mind. Just have another toke, sweetie."
It's Ally McBeal.
Ally McBeal. She's also a fictional character, but she's also real. So,
just like Flockhart.
Calista Flockhart. Thank you.
Yeah, she's not actually there. It's Ally McBeal. Well, Ally McBeal is not there either. It's just Harrison Ford is imagining Chewbacca and Ally McBeal as.
He never. The whole point of marrying her was that he was obsessed with Ally McBeal, and so he was like, "You can't. No, I will not address you as Callista from now on. This is how our marriage is."
I don't know, Callista. I don't know. Ally McBeal.
Ally McBeal. She's like, Harrison. Never
mind. Oh boy, Harrison Ford, we love you.
We do. Please get on the show. Like, you have to be a guest. Yeah. You'll be like co-host.
Yeah, you'll be co-host. That failing that, Mark Hamill, could we have you on just doing your Harrison Ford impression?
That would be very, very nice. We would have just an entire episode of just dedicated to asking him to say the same Harrison Ford lines over and over and over again. It's like, guys, I do other things too. And you're like, we know, man, we know. We're just keep going,
Yeah. The Joker, whatever.
The Joker's cool. Yeah, this is what you're here for. So, yeah.
Dance, Luke Skywalker, dance.
We paid you $50 whole. Yeah, and you also told me that you were like a hospitalized 12-year-old who had like 6 weeks to live. It's like, in my heart, I
am. I'm always wanting to make my wish.
My wish is that you're going to dance like Skywalker. Yeah. Oh my God, Jesus Christ.
Light Skywalker.
Holy shit. Oh my God, I'm tired.
Light Skywalker of the Dark Side trilogy.
Can you tell I got a little sun this weekend?
You got a little too much sun.
Got a little too much sun. This is Kevin, and I'm sunstroking Phil. This is Pixelits, the only novel where we talk about gaming podcasts.
Yeah, that's the podcast. We just talk about other gaming podcasts.
It's just direct responses to gaming podcasts who don't know who we are, but we feel like we've been wronged by.
Like, listen, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You know what? Video game apocalypse. Fuck you.
Fuck you. Just fuck you. You'll never be half the man that we were in the 80s. It was a different time then. The boys were men and the men were drunk.
Oops, all monsters. We're calling you out.
Come on, man. When are you going to accept my pitch that Jimmy Carter is the real monster that you need to be focused on? When are you gonna do it, boys? Or is that too much for your subtle Southern Western Virginian sensibilities?
Is West Virginia considered the South? I mean, it is, but it isn't. Like it's kind of. I listen to West Virginians and I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit of a. It's kind of its own thing, right?
It's very much its own thing, and also not as much as Montana, but definitely another place where there are no consequences. So
no consequences whatsoever. You want to blow up a mountain and to get to the rich coal inside? Go right ahead.
I mean, how else are you going to explain Mothman and the coal mining industry in one state?
West Virginia, West Virginia.
My God, people don't realize that was meant to be more of an exclamation in the negative. West by God, Virginia. They just went with it.
Virginia, it's funny because West Virginia is gorgeous, and it's just been just absolutely run over by capitalism. It's like if Montana had let Mr. Moneybags from Monopoly in, it would probably be have a lot of the issues that West Virginia has had with coal mining and all that stuff.
West Virginia is simultaneously one of the most beautiful and terrifying places I have ever spent extended amounts of time in. And I've just, because I'm all about the spooky mountains and the spooky hills and the spooky woods, even while I'm pissing myself in it. I told my fiance, I said, I want to go camping. We camp a lot. And I said, I really would like to go camping up in West Virginia at some point. And she went, have fun. She left it at that.
Like, you can do that by yourself.
Yeah, you enjoy. I went up there and I was passing through on the way to Pittsburgh for a show, and I saw a sign on the side of the road for the Flatwoods Monster Museum. And for those of you who don't know, the Flatwoods Monster is like this cryptid/alien thing that happened, I think, in the 60s or the 50s or something, and it is a minor blip on the cryptid radar. But I had to, on the way back, it was on my radar at that point. I was like, on the way back, I'm going to stop. And I did. And that town is startlingly desolate. They had this old ass movie theater that you were convinced was going to, it was just, the last movie it had played was like The Tingler or some damn thing. But it said It Chapter 2, and at the time, It Chapter 2 was a new movie. So I'm like, people go the fucking Jesus Christ. It was just a spooky, quiet town, and when I walked into the museum, there was nobody in there, and I just kind of rummaged around and looked at stuff until this woman who had been in the back for a while came out and just kind of waved at me and just let me continue on my business. Anyway, Flatwoods Monster Museum, confusingly in Sutton, West Virginia, not Flatwoods, West Virginia. Go check it out. It was a lot of fun.
Go check it out.
Check it out. This, you guys, please bear with us. We're getting like $150 from the West Virginia Tourism Council for this.
This is just really a long ad spot for West Virginia.
You guys could really just give us a minute. And the food is no. Okay.
And that John Denver song. All right, and
yeah, really.
Remember when the internet was okay? We'll get back to.
We're good.
We're good. All right.
I think they owe us money. We're good.
They okay. Yeah, we really went into the negative there. And we overdrew the account on that one.
Yeah, it's true. Big way.
All right. So, chapter 2 of Far Cry Absolution. A lot of stuff happens in this chapter, and basically it opens up with Will and I guess. Oh, okay. It's Will and John.
It's John and company. It's
company.
Yeah,
Lonnie
group.
Lonnie is there too.
Yeah.
Will and Lonnie are eventually going to be the ones that kind of split off to go look for Mary May.
Mary May.
Which is how the audiobook guy says it.
Oh,
They're going off to, and it's just a real brief scene where they're talking about hunting down Mary May and how Will has like not a real past, but Will knew her as a kid, and he knew her daddy, who has recently passed away.
And they find the wrecked car that she wrecked in the very beginning of the first prologue moment there. So we're kind of brought full circle basically at that point, but she's nowhere to be seen at that point.
She's managed to get away. And then we cut over to Mary May. And she's basically I think later in the chapter or in that they mention her being basically like a mountain goat on the hill as soon as she got out of the car, just like getting out of there.
She gets way ahead of them.
She gets way ahead of them. She had lost them they haven't seen her in about 5 hours. She's lost them about 5 hours ago. And she is just trying to make her way around. She starts like inspecting her injuries where she has a bruise that goes from her thigh all the way up the side of her body from hitting the car door.
Yeah.
She's kind of in rough shape, but she's still managing to get ahead of this hunting party.
Yeah, not bad though for a person who like flipped a car. I have to say, it's just a really bad bruise. I'm sure that hurts like hell, but not bad
at all. And meanwhile, John is just basically calling out, like just shouting out to her. She's hidden basically, and he's just saying, "Hey, we'll come. We'll take you to see your brother. We can all be friends. We can be a big, happy family. You, your brother, me, and everyone else."
Meanwhile, their whole team is like packing AK-47s and shit. They're like, "Yeah, and no harm will come to you." Click, click. Just not really very convincing, to be completely honest. But yeah, she's hiding out from them, and no matter how. And it's funny because this happens several times in the first part of the chapter when she's running from them. She'll like get this huge head start on them, and they'll just manage to just suddenly be creeping up right behind her.
Yeah,
it's a testament to either how shitty of an escaper she is, or how awesome of a tracker Will is. She's just bad at escaping things, I guess.
Yeah, I think, and there's probably the thing is, I would imagine there's only so many. Despite it being a really large and wide and like open area, there's probably only so many places for a person to be able to go, right? I imagine it's like, all right, well, it's not as, even though it's this huge area, it's actually not that big because, she can't, for example, climb up that sheer rock face or whatever. Yeah. So we don't have to go that way.
And it is a lot of wide open plain spaces and that sort of thing. So that's true. Like there's only so much dark wilderness for her to hide within.
Right. Yeah. So Will is this chapter is interesting because of the speed at which it bounces between Mary May and Will, especially at the beginning. Yeah. We're getting their perspective shift relatively quickly. So when we get back to Will has been having thoughts, clearly. He's not super excited about Eden's Gate and all that stuff. He's a believer, right? He's a believer, but he's not showing up every Sunday to church, Right.
Well, and he's also, this everything that they do is making, they're talking a big game about the spirituality, which he clearly needs. And they go into some detail later in the chapter, and we'll get to it, like why he needed this spirituality, why it's important to him. But the more actions they take and the more of the strange directions that they all go in, the less, sort of faith he has in the whole outfit, which is, I mean, I know a lot of people who have, have left the church for exactly the same reasons. Not necessarily because your pastor asked you to hunt down a young woman with a gun, literally speaking, sometimes metaphorically, sure. But he's just not at all thrilled at the prospect of them hunting down Mary, because he doesn't really know what they want with her. And any suspicions he has on what they might want with her, clearly he's not exactly thrilled about.
Right. And pretty much the worst person for Will to be paired with in this scenario, if you're having a crisis of faith in the institution of this church that you belong to, probably the worst person to be paired with is Lonnie, who is
fucking Lonnie.
Just the worst person.
He's the worst. He's the fucking worst. And yeah, he's paired with him this whole time. They're working together, and Lonnie is just such a piece of shit. And he basically represents everything that Will.
He's everything that's wrong with the church.
Right. Well, he kind of makes me think of people I've known over the years that are everything that's wrong with any church, frankly.
Right.
So
yep.
He's a real piece of shit. And of course they're working together, and Lonnie, you know what Lonnie does? He has this tendency to say the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
You know, he is not the guy you want on your team. He's like the cultists, version of that dumb redneck, white supremacist, where they're like, hey, we're trying to make sure that we're trying to get it so that people don't realize that we're actually white supremacists. We want them to just think, we believe in, believe in Jesus and being proud of your country. And then later, when they're sucked in, boom, we'll hit them with the whole blacks are inferior thing. And,
right.
And he's the one going, right, yeah. And so they're recruiting, and they're like, yeah, we just believe in Jesus in our country. And he's like, yeah, and it's good because you don't seem very dark either. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, he is mask off, just, saying the quiet part out loud when really ruining it not ruining it because these are people that you want it to be ruined for. I mean, this church is not good people. But he is on the surface what everybody else is underneath. Yeah.
There's a great example of it I found when Will's trying to figure out why Lonnie, what are we going to do with Mary? Why does it matter that Mary's gotten away from them? What do we care? And Will says that she's not a believer. Her family has always hated the church, and I don't see how bringing her in would change that. And Lonnie says it's better to have her under control than to have her loose out there. You're like, Jesus Christ, Lonnie.
Right. Yeah. Because she's saying bad things about the church, so we need to bring her in and talk to her about that. And
with the biggest quotation marks around the words "talk to her" that you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah. So that's happening with Lonnie and Will, and we cut back over to Mary May, and she's come upon a Spanish father and son.
Yes, some herders.
Some herders, yeah. They're tending to some sheep, and obviously that is the subtext that we have these people looking after sheep.
Yeah, she's running from a religious cult, and she comes upon some very kind, humble people watching over their flocks by night. Let's just say.
Yeah. And basically she starts asking them what do they know and what, well, they're asking her what's she doing?
Yeah,
because she basically needs food and rest and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But she kind of digs into what they're doing, and they're keeping an eye out for woods. And the father, and I thought this was kind of neat, the father only speaks in Spanish, and they never translate. They never directly translate what he's saying.
No.
The son will kind of talk talk about what he's saying, but they never actually directly translate what he's saying.
Right.
So at one point he says "es una mala iglesia," which is it's like that's the bad church or something like that.
Yeah.
And the son says a bad place. They have tried several times to talk to their employer. So basically, the church wants to just take the sheep.
Yeah, and they do. Like they keep stealing them from them, and they're just trying to make a living. And
it comes up that the wolves are not wolves. right, exactly. Like we don't have to worry about. We have to worry about these cultists stealing our sheep away. And actually, this led to one of an unintentionally hilarious moment to me. And I wonder if you didn't notice it too. Because they're like, yeah, this church group, they're bad people, man. They keep stealing our sheep, and we're just trying to make a living, and we're losing more and more of them, and it's pissing off our boss and all that stuff. And Mary says, she's like, basically she says like, I know what you mean, because I have a bar and they keep trying to shut down my bar. And the way it just cracked me up, because it's like, they're stealing our sheep. We just want to live. We're just trying to get by. And she goes, I know what you mean. They keep shutting down my bar. And if there's something, of course she's right. It is kind of the same thing. It's similar, but it's similar, but the scale, on the existential scale, it's very different.
Yeah, you're just like, I know what you mean. All of my shooters and Jello shots are gone. No, none of the slutty girls for Slutty Girl Night showed up to hand out shots that are in test tubes for $5 a pop. How am I supposed to get by without my light up Jägermeister neon sign? They kicked it in.
And the sheep herders are like, yeah, it's the same.
It's the same. It's totally the same. It's totally the same.
And the sheep herders are like, okay, this land belongs to no one. It's right. And they're talking about, they're over there quoting like Marx and Engels to her, and she's like, but my Coors Light.
Yeah, that's true. Like, if these people really wanted to help the people of the land, they would, get the means of production back into the hands of the workers. And she's like, I know what you mean. I lost 5 cases of Rumplemints. Yeah,
that's amazing.
But they feed her, and they take care of her, and and they find her. She ends up crashing with them. Doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She sleeps at their little campsite.
And actually, you caught yourself there.
Yeah, she sleeps with them.
Yeah, she sleeps with them. It was a weird 5 pages.
It was a weird 5 page. It was got very, very way too descriptive at times.
Yeah, a little. If you think that this guy got real creative with describing the dew on the grass in the morning. Wait until you see how he described the dew on the grass in the morning.
Oh God!
So she ends up getting she gets a ride from one of well, God, there it is again. God damn it! She gets a ride. She rides with one of the young men. One of the young men offers her a ride on his disco stick, and
we're gonna move on to Will.
Will. There's no way out of this gently or easily. So yeah, moving on to Will, but it's another terrific back and forth, because Will and Lonnie come upon the same group of Mexican herdsmen.
Yeah,
and they basically, the herdsmen. It's kind of hilarious, because when she met them, the father doesn't speak English. That's true. But the son was like willing to be like, the
son was like, yeah, I speak English.
Yeah, sure.
And when they show up, the son's like, I don't know.
No hablo English, assholes. I got nothing. And his instincts are correct, because Lonnie is the biggest douchebag in the world.
Lonnie is I can only picture Lonnie as David Spade from Joe Dirt.
Right. But without any level of pathos or sympathy.
Exactly.
Like, he's the worst. And he's like, he's telling them that they're rude, and he's demanding food.
He's
they don't have
stealing their stuff. He's like stealing their stuff in front of them, and you're like, you guys are rude. As he's stealing their stuff.
Yeah, and so ultimately he tries to steal a horse from one of them, and the kid pulls a knife on him, and Lonnie just like beats the shit out of him.
Just destroys this kid.
Yeah, and goes in it looks like he might be ready to kill the kid, but Will stops him. It's kind of funny because
Will stops him by wrapping his rifle around Lonnie's neck and nearly causing Lonnie to pass out.
Right. And it's kind of fascinating because there's this great line in it where, Will says, leave the kid alone. He's just trying to protect his stuff. You're trying to steal his stuff. And Lonnie says, what's his? And it's right after the moment where the herdsmen are talking about this land doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the sheep. It belongs to all of us. It belongs to, the world. And we're just standing on it for now and taking advantage of it for now. And so they believe in, everyone having access to this place. And presumably, and helping people out when you find each other along the way, and Lonnie's sense of entitlement to what is, what he sees as his, he says, what's theirs.
Lonnie thinks everything belongs to him.
Yes,
and the church.
And he believes it belongs to the church, but and through the church it belongs to him. But what's kind of funny about that is he goes on these tirades, and they say in the end that he isn't at a certain point later in this chapter. But Kevin, do you think Lonnie's a true believer?
He is a true believer in the worst possible way.
Right.
He believes. I think he believes that he is owed something for what he does for the church, and I think he does believe in the stuff that the church is saying. But I don't think he's like. He's weird. It's weird because he doesn't actually do the things that the church says you need to do.
Right.
He doesn't
abstain from all the time.
He's constantly breaking the rules. He's basically just picking and choosing the things he wants to believe that suit Lonnie. So, true believer, no. He believes in Lonnie, most importantly.
Right. He's just found a convenient set of rules that match up with
his worst instincts are exacerbated by this church.
Right. And it's something I've always felt about the worst part about organized religions in many cases is that it doesn't challenge people. People just find the verse or the scripture or the church that won't challenge them on the things that they already want to do.
Sure.
You're never going to meet somebody who genuinely in their heart of hearts loves gay people, loves gay culture, loves everything about gay folks and everything. Like they think they're the coolest, and they want them to live happily and everything. But then they go, but I got to tell you, it's tough though because the Bible does say that you guys are an abomination, and you're not going to run into those people. Not really. The Christians I know who are pro-gay, for example, typically tend to be in the camp of like, well, look, the Bible says a lot of things, man.
Yeah.
So, it's all kind of the same at that point.
We know a pastor who is very much in that boat. Like Professor Cheney is he's very much in that because he's ordained.
And he's good people. Yeah,
and he's good people. And I think that's the problem ultimately when you have such a broad document. Right. When you have such a broad document like the Bible, and I can't really speak on anything else because that's the only thing that I grew up with and all that. Sure. But you have a broad document like the Bible that is open to such wild interpretation. So not only is it a massive book, the depth at which it can be interpreted varies from line to line.
Oh God, yeah.
So
based on a number of things, based on
a number of things. Translation, was it a translation from Hebrew? Was it a translation from Greek? Was it a translation from this to that? So many different things. And
Absolutely.
that's ultimately, where the source of that problem is, that it can ultimately say whatever you want. 1,000 monkeys writing Shakespeare for 1,000 years or whatever, or writing on a typewriter for 1,000 years will eventually produce Shakespeare.
Exactly.
It's basically something like that in terms of interpretation. Like all these people just keep looking at it for the answer that they want it to have,
and
rather
if you keep looking, you'll find it.
You'll find it.
You'll find whatever you want to hear. I think this kind of comes back to the theme we talked about in the last episode. This book, it doesn't have any business being this smart.
Yes.
It's we talked briefly, and we're going to get a little bit into this topic, but we talked briefly last week about bliss, which is a drug that is manufactured by the cult. And I complained that it was one of those things that, like, you want to, basically the excuse is that these cultists are all under this drug's power, which is a really weak message compared to, no, man, they
truly believe. Yeah.
Right. And Urban Waite seems to agree with me, because
yeah.
He's got his finger on the dial of this kind of cult and how it works, and we're going to see a lot more of it in this chapter alone, let alone in the rest of the book. So, moving along, let's see. Oh yeah, so they keep hunting, and they eventually spot Mary in a field.
Yeah,
in the distance. And he's like, and Will kind of it's kind of hilarious because I called it. I was so pleased with myself. But an idiot could have seen it coming from a mile away, to be fair. He's got his scope on his rifle, and she's this dot off in the distance, and he uses the scope to ID her, and he says, yeah, that's Mary. And to prove it to Lonnie, he hands his rifle over to Lonnie, who uses the scope to find her, goes, yeah, that's her. And he has the nerve to be surprised when Lonnie tries to take a shot at her. I'm so worked up. I've got the hiccups.
Oh, God, the hiccups. Meanwhile, at the same time, John's men are attacking the herders with AK-47s.
Yeah, no, because no good deed goes unpunished in this book.
The herders, which actually, like, the guy, the father flipped and on Mary May after the whole scene told he said in Spanish he told Will she's going to the church up there, and he points to the ridge where she had gone off, and so then
and to be fair, this is largely because they just beat the living shit out of his son, so he's a little upset.
But yeah, John's men, meanwhile, are trying to get the sheep.
Yeah, because the sheep are real important when you have a cult. You need wool, you need meat.
You need wool, you need meat, you need all that. You need that mutton. And so it's like there's a lot of things happening simultaneously. There's the gunfire at the camp, and then Will. I like this. It's actually a nice little bit of writing, because Lonnie uses the gunfire to push the bolt the bullet into place. So It says Will might not have heard the click of his rifle had they kept on shooting, but as close to him and as familiar to him as it was, he turned almost in the same instant. Lonnie pushed the safety forward on the rifle, and so basically Lonnie was trying to use the cover of the gunfire to arm the gun.
Pretty smart, really.
And then Will realized what was going on. Yeah. And it cuts over to Mary May, who's basically like running across the field, and then a bullet just hits the ground like 10 feet away from her.
Yeah, and she realizes just how fucked she is at this point.
Which Lonnie took the shot, but we cut back to see that Will basically had tackled Lonnie just as he was taking the shot, causing it to miss.
Right. And finally, we get what we've been waiting for, like half of this book. Lonnie and Will just have a throwdown.
Absolute throwdown.
Old former drunk versus piece of shit current drunk. And Lonnie seems to have the upper hand on him because he's younger, And
he's a younger dude, and he's really good. He's really good at punching people, as they've kind of set up. He's got a good punch. Yeah, got a good one too. And I think it's really neat to remember this whole thing is taking place on a ridge.
Yes.
And it's like this really dramatic fight between the two of them. Lonnie is taking swings. The rifle gets dropped. Will thinks that it's like fallen off the edge. Basically, and I like because it's not that drawn out. It's not a very drawn out scene.
It doesn't
go on long, which makes sense for where they are. Basically what ends up happening is the rifle drops. Will sees where it is. Just as he like kind of ducks down to grab it, Lonnie takes a swing at Will. And this, because Lonnie misses Will, he throws himself over the edge.
Yeah. Literally throws himself off a cliff.
Literally throws himself off a cliff with the momentum of his punch. And it's just so satisfying.
He dies horribly. It's great.
He falls off the cliff and he hits like every rock on the way down.
Oh yeah.
And basically, is it in this immediate scene? Oh yes. One of Lonnie's arms lay behind him in a strange backwards rapture, while his face looked upward and his head appears like it had been popped and then stretched away off his body.
Yeah, he's effectively decapitated.
Yeah, it's an internal decapitation.
It's oh my god, it is brutal, and we're almost halfway through the book at this point, and so this is a particularly garish death, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Could not have happened to a nicer guy.
Good fucking riddance, Lonnie. I'm and there's a part of me as a writer, that was kind of like, oh man, as a writer, you kind of want to drag those guys out and get their just desserts maybe at the very end, the final climax. But as a reader, I was like, good, fuck them. I'm ready to move on with the story now.
Get him a nice, satisfying death to basically the book's, obviously not the antagonist of the book.
But an early heel, let's say.
He's a heel. Yeah, he's a henchman. And John Seed is still the big bad for the purposes of this story, but
but a particularly nasty heel, yeah. And so Will searches through Lonnie's stuff, and he ends up finding this wolf collar, which is a transmitter. And they've been talking about using transmitters and planting them on people and things to basically know where they are. And this basically explains why wherever they have gone, John Seed and his buddies have been sure to follow. They've been following a signal.
Right. Exactly. Because it's like it's like Lonnie hasn't been talking to John, and so they've just been using a transmitter to follow along.
Right. So as this is happening, and I thought this is a pretty interesting bit of writing that continues throughout the chapter. We switch over to Mary, and she's watching Will rummage through all this shit, and she sees Will holding a gun. And based on where he is and everything like that, she kind of assumes Will's the guy who shot at me.
Sure.
So she basically gets the hell out of Dodge and escapes further into the wilderness, with Will going after her. And it goes back and forth a couple of times in short moments of her creeping through the wilderness, him going through, trying to call her name in a way that wouldn't be threatening. He needs to protect her. he feels responsible for her at this point. Now, Will did take a good shot to the stomach, not an actual gunshot or anything, but Lonnie knocked him over, punched him, and just
it kind of loose. It basically it's written in a way where it's like, is it from the Lonnie beating the shit out of him, or is it something else? Who knows? Moving on. He coughs up something. He's been coughing up junk throughout the book, and I never thought to bring it up at any point. First, because it's gross. Second, because he's an old man and a former alcoholic. Of course, he's coughing shit up every morning. That's natural. That's the way it happens. Have you not lived with an old man? Like, that's the first 5 minutes of every morning is like that's just getting it all out. Yeah, getting all the stuff that's been sitting in the lungs all night.
Yeah. Did you have the air conditioner on? The dude's stuffed up. That's a fact. But this time around, they seem to be implying that something is wrong in his guts, and they're not exactly clear on it, but probably, if you know writers, not a good thing. So he keeps following her, and Mary's eventually, while she's hiding, she hears someone calling her name, and it seems like a nice voice, a voice that she hasn't been calling her yet.
And it's her brother.
It's her brother, and you think at first it's going to be Will. I thought it was Will at first, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's her brother Drew, who she's been looking for this entire time.
That is Drew, who is her goal for this entire story so far, is to find Drew. Drew finds her.
Yes. Yes.
So basically, because she had been, she ended up by a road, and so she sees the headlights, and then she hears the name call out for her, and it's Drew, and they have a little moment. It's just like a little back and forth. I mean, like, she asks him, "Have you heard about Daddy? Have you heard about Mama?" She kind of has this moment. She finally breaks down a little bit. She's crying.
She's been keeping it together for a long time.
She's been keeping it together for a long time. Her parents have both died within a week of each other.
Yeah.
And at the very end of this scene, she notices that Drew is driving one of the church trucks.
Yeah.
And he just says, "Yep, now get in the truck and let me help you."
Yeah. And he keeps saying, like, "I'm going to take you home. Let's get you in the truck. Let's get you home where you can have something to eat, something to drink. Let's get you home." And I'm just sitting there going, "Come on, girl. You know he isn't talking about your home."
They are not talking about the same home.
Not the same home. Come on, man. Like, we all know, we've all met that weird skeezy person at the end of Last Call at the bar who just, come on. You know what's happening, but it's her brother. So
it's her brother. What's she going to do?
What's she going to do?
And then Will shows up. Basically, he shows up just as the scene, like,
at the very,
is
he
wrapping
watches them leave.
The tail end. He's watching them leave.
Yeah.
And then John rolls up.
Yeah, and he congratulates him. It's like you delivered Mary to us, basically.
Yeah. He's like, "You did a great job," and Will is like, "Yeah, I killed Lonnie." And John's like, "Yeah, it's fine."
Well, I thought that was really interesting, because that was super culty what he does. Because it's like he says, "You know, Lonnie was a bad seed, and he was just a he was starting to get further and further away. You notice he was drinking."
John Seed says Lonnie was a bad seed, and then looks directly into the camera.
I thank all of you for joining us in this, my final episode of Pixel Lit, where I finally took it too far without even realizing it. I will now excommunicate myself from this fine and upstanding society known as Pixel Lit, and podcasting in general, as a mea culpa for this grievous sin. Jesus Christ. But
I think it's hilarious.
All right, back to the show. So he absolves him, is what he does. He says, Will says, I killed the guy. I'm responsible for his death. And John forgives him and absolves him of his sin. It's a very religious moment in a way.
Yeah.
There's a, it's very culty. He says, you did nothing. And then he goes into that, basically saying, you came to us. When you came to us, you needed us, and we gave you everything you needed. And now at this point, we owe you. You've done so much good for us. You're top brass here as far as we're concerned. We're going to take care of you now, and let's head on home and let's get you washed up, and let's treat you like the badass leader you are. Yeah, exactly. And it's weird because I'll tell you what, they kind of got me. That's it. That's how it was good enough writing that I was like, oh, good for Will. Good for Will.
Good for Will. Will's getting the recognition he deserves from this crazy ass cult.
Yeah, that crazy ass cult finally gave him a recognition. They gave him better than the usual, cost of living pay raise every year. They did right by him. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh God. We cut over to Mary May and Drew, and they're having a delightfully awkward scene because what we thought was happening at the end of the previous scene is actually happening, where Drew is like, "Yep, well, I'm not taking you to your home or Mama and Daddy's home. I'm taking you to cult land."
He is brainwashed. Like
he is. Drew is gone.
Drew's not here, Mrs. Torrance. And and he says, and he's like trying to be reasonable in the same way that, like, well, I mean, Jack Nicholson in The Shining's trying to be reasonable with Shelley Duvall, where it's like he's like, hey, listen, all we want is to talk. You come over and let's all talk. And then afterwards, we'll let you go. And it's like listening to Jack Nicholson be like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brains in. Like, bitch, talk and roll. Get out of there.
Open the door and get out of there. And he notices that she's holding the gun now at this point.
Yeah. Daddy's gun.
Daddy's .38 Magnum.
That's right. He's like, that's weird that I started talking about weird shit that suddenly I noticed you were holding a gun.
It probably doesn't mean anything.
Probably nothing to do with it. Anyway, let's go to get you brainwashed.
He's like, he looks over and he goes, "Hey, is that the gun of Barry Burton?"
And it cuts over to Will. Will is getting his meat and threes. They took care of him. He's getting fed by his old friend Holly, who used to be a neighbor of his.
Right.
They knew each other before the accident that took his wife and kid. We get some implications on that. Implications.
And Holly is going to be the liaison, the Will liaison, now that Lonnie is gone. Because that's a official job is the person who talks to Will.
Right. The person who takes care of Will. She's a little more pleasant.
Lonnie.
She feeds him. And she starts by confessing to him that the cult's getting a little weird.
Cult's getting a little culty.
Getting a little weird, Kevin. Could you believe it?
Oh, I would have never have guessed. Basically, it's and what's neat is because you realize Will hasn't actually been in the cult's main area in a long time.
No, he lives on the outskirts. He hands over what he hunts and everything like that. He doesn't like being, and you get a little bit further into that in this chapter where he wakes up and he's just not comfortable indoors. He needs to be outside. He needs to be out of doors, that kind of thing. And it's more than he's a woodsman at that point. Like, there's something very necessary about him being outdoors. So yeah, he's not always in the know into what's going on over at Eden's Gate. He doesn't know the full story. And she explains to him about Bliss And this is the first time. Is this the first time we have bliss mentioned in the book?
I believe so.
Yeah, which is this drug that all the cultists seem to be on, and it's kind of funny because I was just listening to a podcast when I was reading this. I had been listening to a podcast about the use of methamphetamines within Nazi Germany.
Oh,
And it was like somebody was writing about it, and he said that Germany was a methamphetamine. The Nazis were a methamphetamine government, basically. Everyone was on them because everyone needed them just to get by. Because they wanted, if you were a mother, you needed to be a baby factory to get those Aryan babies out there. And so they were on meth to stay awake and take care of
everybody was awake and doing things.
Right. And soldiers, obviously, that's obvious. The brown shirts were on them. Everyone was doing meth because it kept you up and it kept you active, and it helped you to do violence in large quantities without fear and without pain. And the way she describes the cultists being on bliss is basically the same thing. She said these young men are going out there, they're getting all blissed up, and then they can just absolutely crush shit. They can steal and destroy, and they have no conscience, and it's they're all on it. And the parallel is just kind of amazing. And if you're gonna have a super drug that's all over a cult and it not be the reason that the cult's a cult, I gotta say this is a pretty damn good explanation. She doesn't talk about it for long, but in a very short amount of time, Urban White does a great job of explaining the importance of this drug.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that, and I just wanted to mention, because we talked briefly about Will and why he's here, and we had kind of, I think we missed it earlier. There is a moment where Will has a dream in this chapter, and it's good as time to talk about it as any. Will has a dream earlier in this chapter about his family, and that he is unable, and it's a very simple dream. He basically puts his daughter to bed, he leaves, she starts screaming, and then he's unable to get back into the room that she is in. The door just won't open. And that's the extent of the dream. Yeah. Is he can't save her. And so that in context with, you have Holly who knows Will, she knows his past.
Yeah.
You can start to see the darkening clouds of Will's past life are starting to reappear after years of being stuffed down underneath this, basically this blanket of the church. There's these little leaks now of like I've never actually dealt with this,
Right.
So yeah, and then we're back with Mary May and there we go. And Mary May she's cleaned up, she's getting dressed, and she is talking to Drew. It's a real brief scene. But Drew basically puts her on notice. You're a guest here, Mary May. Our parents always taught us not to be rude.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, by the way. That's another thing that the fucking Nazis love doing. They like to accuse you, if you're not willing to listen to them be fucking psychopaths, then you're rude. It's just nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we cut back over to Will, and he's having a scene with the father.
Yes.
Joseph Seed himself is on the scene. And the father is giving him some advice, and Will is starting to remember, this is the first reference, I believe, to the tattoos, which is one of the more macabre things. It's a moment. It's a huge moment in the game
Oh yeah, big time.
And they make a meal of it. Urban Waite really made a meal of it in this book, where basically, and they just hint to it in this scene: the tattoo, the razor, the giving of the skin.
Yeah.
And Will is basically just reaffirming his faith to the father. Not necessarily.
Father asks him basically to be his hatchet man.
Yeah.
He says, he heavily implies, he says, taking shots, punishing, like, I'm going to need you to do a lot of the shit that we've been asking you to do. He seems to be asking him to. Are you ready
to do what it takes to find salvation?
Yeah. And that's also where we, where he the father openly mentions his wife and child being taken away from him. He talks about the end of the world. You get a really good sermon-y, apocalyptical kind of sermon from this guy, while he also basically tells Will, I'm gonna need you to be a real murder hobo for me in the next few months here. So hope that's good. And at first, Will can't really acknowledge the father. He finds that he has a harder time looking at him, acknowledging what he's saying. But in the end, clearly he makes some sort of affirmation, because it cuts to Mary also entering.
She's in the same room and basically watching the scene from another angle.
Yeah.
And Will is leaving, Mary sees his face, and Will actually says, "I'm glad to see you, Mary May," as he's leaving.
Yeah.
And says the same thing that Drew, and she starts to remember what happened, like Will and his past. And then we finally get a good, like a little bit more about Will's past. She remembered the man. She had gone with her own family to the funeral of his daughter and his wife. A car accident, if she remembered right. Will standing there alone as people filed past, her own father and mother leaning in, reaching to hold him. And Mary May thinking now how about even then he had smelled of booze and something sweet like salt and sweat, and the turning of a body into something other than what it had once been.
Yeah, it's a terrific bit of writing.
Yeah. We say that a lot, but Urban Waite has really been really fucking just. He knows how to turn a sentence into.
He does. The image is so clear. This widower who is basically preserving himself in alcohol and salt. He's mummifying himself before this whole world. He's turning into something that he wasn't before. They are witnessing this strange transformation.
And she doesn't make the connection that he was the guy shooting at her.
No, but
which he wasn't, but the person she assumed was shooting at her was him, but she doesn't connect this guy with that person.
Right. But yeah, and then you get the classic, the father pulling the "Come, my children," when he sees them, and it's like, dude, just because you're the Messiah, is it too much to say, "Hey, come on in"? Can you fucking put the hyperbole back in your goddamn purse and just talk like a human being for 5 minutes, please? I think that's why I think I'm cult proof because of that. Like, the moment someone starts to preach on that level and start insisting that he's a father and I'm his child.
Kneel now, and I will give you the blessing of my hands. Like,
no, man,
come on.
like, ugh.
Come on, dude.
No, it's no. If you belong to an organization that requires that you refer to its leaders as father, get out. Unless they want you to call him daddy and you're into it. Otherwise, get the fuck out. That train never ends at the right station. It is always bad news. We do get an interesting bit of background, just a little bit, on the father, because Mary May remembers him.
Right, when he first came up.
Yeah.
Before the cult.
Right. And Kevin, do you remember where he comes from?
Joseph Seed came up with his brothers John and Jacob from Georgia.
Of course he did. That explains a lot. As a man from Georgia, I can tell you this explains a lot.
The father from Georgia.
From Georgia. Like, they Savannah didn't want him. They're like, get your hobo ass out of here. Go preach somewhere else. And it's like, oh yeah, he had to get far, far away. You know that no one moves from Georgia to Montana who didn't do it out of some necessity.
There was a reason that he needed to get a distance away from Georgia.
Yeah, you got a PI on your tail. Get the fuck out of this East Coast. Just go. Oh my God. Yeah, so you get a little bit of background on him, and that cracks me up. Just a little tiny bit. Just a little.
Just a little nugget.
You don't get to talk. People need to talk more about, these cult leaders. Because the reason they can become cult leaders is because you don't know about them as a stupid 10-year-old who shat his pants during PE. That's
every day.
That's the only
every day
reason
shat his pants.
Every day, and happily, by the way. And then he went away, and he came back a month later, and everything was good. And we don't know what happened, but he was fine. But that kid's not. He can't be a cult leader. People never forget. That's just how it works.
It's sort of like that girl from the Turning Point USA girl. What's her name? The blonde girl with the machine guns.
Oh yeah, with the big hair, sure.
With the big hair, yeah. She shit her pants at a party once. That's like every time she is in, like, she's a Twitter main character or whatever, people bring up the fact that, like, oh, didn't you shit your pants at a party?
You shit your pants? Just give up, kid. Just give up. There's no career in this. No career for you.
Nah, the right wing grift. Just let it be. Let it be,
kid. Just let it be. So that's let's see, and we get a brief moment there at the very end here with Will and Holly again. And Will can't sleep. He wakes up, like I mentioned before. He just doesn't do well in enclosed places, it seems.
Yeah.
And he kind of forces himself outside to get a little air. And Holly finds him there. And Holly's been sleeping with John Seed, which cracks me up. Like, she's just
the way she says it.
She's so casual about it. She's like, I'm fucking him, whatever.
I'm fucking him.
They don't call him John Seed for nothing, if you know.
Yayo.
And so they just have a little existential conversation about, everything in their lives. And she is very clearly a true believer. She really believes in this shit. And that's why I guess her description of all the stuff going down with Bliss and everything, she just refers to it. Oh, it's a little weird. It's the cult version of boys being boys, I suppose.
Yes. So she's a true believer in that she didn't get this Bliss stuff. Back in my day, we just believed that doomsday was coming without it.
Right. Right. We spoke in tongues through sheer will. And this is also when we basically have it spelled out for us that Will's wife and daughter died in a car wreck and that he was responsible.
He was responsible he was at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
He had bought the drink for the guy whose car ran into his family's.
Yep.
Basically his wife and daughter were driving to the bar because they were afraid that Will was going to kill himself, with drunk driving. And then the irony is that they are the ones that died because a drunk driver hit them.
Yeah. He encouraged the guy who got hammered. As far as he can tell, the shot that he bought for the dude was the one that pushed him over the edge that made him drunk enough that he ended up killing his family.
Right. Which is, I mean, that's a lot of the guilt. I mean, there's no way to specifically tell that it's.
Of course, you know.
But you know, he's never going to. You're never going to convince him otherwise of something like that.
Exactly. He was in this bad place, this dark place. They say that he's been drunk every day since he was 15 at that point. Right. And he was in this dark place, and it connected to him losing the only things that he gave a damn about. Or at least kind of gave a damn about. You'd think if he gave more of a damn, he'd actually be there with him, but that's not how alcoholism works. So
right.
He's just, you get a look at the dark cloud that is hanging over this man and why. And that's how cults work. That's how cults work. They find people who need help. They're
down and out.
Yeah, they find you when you're most vulnerable. They find people who need something, whether it's a whole new change of life like him, or just the comfort of some sort of spirituality that's different from everyone else's. It can be very simple. It can be very complex, but they find what you need the most. And they found him, and they got their hooks into him. And even now, when he's doubting and not happy with the direction things are going, he doesn't say peep.
Doesn't at all.
So he's kind of stuck in this place, and we're gonna need to see him redeem himself, if you will.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Mary May is just not having a good time.
She is having a lousy night's sleep, Kevin. I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah, they're basically her brother had promised to take her back to Falls End. He didn't do that. And he's not going to, even though he is he's basically lying to her right now. You'll drive me back to town, won't you? Yes. You'll come with me. Yes. He's not going to do that, because instead he's going to let John Seed kidnap her, basically, in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And a really disturbing bit of you need to be cleaned. You need to be, just this whole, you need to
it's
wash.
Gross.
That's
and she's scared. He says there's no reason to be scared. And 100% of the time when somebody tells somebody else there's no reason to be scared is a good time to be scared.
There totally is a reason to be. Yeah, absolutely. If someone tells you, I'm never going to plunge a fishing knife into your eye. Just make sure that you've hidden away all the fishing knives.
That's oddly specific, and I don't like that you've said that.
And I'm moving to Montana.
That's actually the origin story for the Seed brothers.
The prequel.
The prequel.
Yeah.
Basically Drew is. You know what the cult members like Drew are? They're basically like the working Joes from Alien Isolation.
That's exactly what it is.
Where it's you're playing Alien Isolation, and working Joe is basically choking you out, and the working Joe says stuff like, "Please do not struggle."
Yeah, this is for the best. Please,
this is for your own good.
if you don't stop struggling, I'll have to contact HR. That's exactly what he is. He's just this dead-eyed, fuck doll of a man with psychopathic tendencies as far as the cult is concerned. He doesn't matter that it's his sister. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. Just that, it's good for the cult. Right. There's no way he can delude himself into actually believing that things are going to work out real well for his sister. But clearly there have been issues. We get implications in previous sections that, he fought with his family. He seems to be the black sheep. And there's another moment that you get where a cult absolutely can take advantage,
Yeah, exactly.
Trouble within family. Well, we've got a family. We'll be your family instead. And that seems to be exactly what happened. And, either his sister's going to get cleansed and washed in the blood of the lamb, so to speak, or she'll die. And he seems kind of okay with that.
He's okay with either outcome,
right?
And the confrontation turns physical where basically Drew yanks her off the bed that she was laying on. And then she came off the bed with her arms flailing, reaching for anything that might stop her fall. Nothing could be found except for the bare sheets, and she fell 2 feet from the bed and landed on one elbow, then hit her head. The pain was instant and reverberated down through her skin all the way through her body. She had hit hard and fast, and she could barely think except to know she was being dragged across the carpet. She turned and bent away from him, reaching out with her hands. Her fingernails dug for purchase, but came away with only dirt and sand and lint and whatever other thing could be taken underneath her nails.
Yep. It's brutal.
It's brutal.
It's
and then
brutal.
John Seed shows up and they throw her into the back of a pickup truck. And John says, "This is the end. This is what I've always wanted for you. You have been alone. You have lived without the word of the Father, and now you will be alone no more."
And that's chapter 2.
And that's the end of the second chapter.
Holy fucking shit. And by the way, that's the end of the second chapter. We are actually literally halfway through the book now at this point. So it's a weirdly paced book, but
it is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, chapter 1 was shorter than chapter 2. I believe 2 and 3 are the meaty ones, the meatiest of the book. It gets shorter again after that. But yeah, it is an interestingly paced book. And you know, we'll see how long it takes us to get through it. But what are your thoughts so far?
I mean, man, it's only getting better as we go. And I gotta be honest, just based on the kind of stuff that I normally read, this is actually overtaking Halo: Fall of Reach as my favorite book we've read on the show so far.
Oh, wow.
Assuming it doesn't, we're halfway through, and assuming it doesn't take a nosedive into Shittown, which, totally could happen.
It can happen.
Yeah. Assuming we stay on this track, I'm a huge Cormac McCarthy fan. I'm a huge fan of, survivalist shit and Far Cry in general. And just all of the little boxes are being ticked for me, just me personally. And I really dig Urban Waite's style of writing.
It makes me kind of want to check out his non video game books.
Yeah, he does a lot of thrillers. Big surprise there.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff. And by the way, before we forget, we did reference a couple of podcasts today, and you should definitely check them out. The first one is friend of the pod, Oops All Monsters. If you haven't checked that one out, we need you to contact them and tell them they need to get off their West Virginian asses and do a Flatwoods Monster episode. That would make me very happy. And the other one, if you're interested in learning a little more about not just the drug addictions of Nazis, but also just generally evil people throughout the history, it's a podcast called Behind the Bastards, which is very popular.
Oh, I've seen that. It's been like when I scroll through Apple Podcasts, I've seen it recommended a few times.
I cannot recommend it enough. And this last week, they just started an episode, two-parter, called, I believe, Hitler's Drug Addiction. And it's about the history of drug use by Hitler and within the Nazi Party. It's fascinating. And the guy's a great writer and historian, that sort of thing. And he covers everything from modern assholes like Steven Seagal and, Dr. Phil to Stalin and fucking Hitler and shit like that. It is fantastic.
That's awesome. I'll have to
good.
Check it out. I'll have to check that out.
Check those both out. You will not be sorry.
All right, well, that'll do it for today's episode. You can follow us on Twitter at PixelLitPod. And please remember to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out. Otherwise, give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with your favorite friend, family member, canine, feline, whatever you want to do. Please share. It really helps us out. My name is Kevin. With me, as always, is Phil.
Bye.
This has been Pixel Lit. Take care, everybody.
Bye.